Hey, everybody. My name is Tyler. I am the host of the Keep Pounding podcast. And today is my first video, and we're going to be giving a recap of the whole Panther 2024 NFL season. We're going to start from the beginning of the free agency, or David Tepper started hiring Dan Morgan and Dave Canales, and then we're going to end till now. So going into the off season, we've gone through the cycle of head coach and a couple of GMs with Marty Herney and then Scott Fitter and then now Dan Morgan. So there's just this constant revolving door with mainly head coaches and several GMs. And whenever David Tepper made this hire with Dan Morgan, I wasn't 100% sure about this. And the reason why is because obviously he had ties with Scott Fitterer. He was the assistant GM for Scott Fitterer. And that's not really a good thing. Last year was probably the 2023 season was probably the worst season in Panther history. The worst season in Panther history. Just with moving up and getting the first overall pick and just the all-star coaching staff, it just wasn't a good season. And so whenever you have ties with someone like that, you're not going to be entirely confident as a fan base. But I do like that Dan Morgan has a scouting background. I feel like he's good at eyeing talent, especially deeper in drafts. We saw that with this draft coming up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I do believe during the hiring process, David Tepper asked those questions with Dan Morgan. Hey, what were the things that you did not like about the 2023 offseason that Scott Fitterer did? Were you wanting to do things differently? What would you have done differently? Or what would you have done if you were the GM at that time? Whether it's free agency in the draft. And then what's your vision now? He had to ask those questions. I do like that David Tepper hired Brant Tillis. And Brant Tillis is the executive vice president of football operations. He was with the Chiefs for 14 seasons. He has great background with the cap, contracts, analytics. So I do like that you have that. You have him, and then you have Dan Morgan, two very strong strengths, totally different. But when you put that together, hopefully that gives us a good outcome, as far as off season coming up. But I do like those two hirings together. David Tepper also hired first-year head coach Dave Canales. Dave Canales was offensive coordinator for the Bucs for one season. I do feel like his hire he hired him a year or two before he was ready. Like he was going to be a hot name in the head coaching market. So I feel like we got him a year or two before he was going to be out there. And you kind of saw that throughout the season, how he made some rookie head coaching mistakes, but I feel like he improved, and I feel like we got our guy. But I do believe Tepper is changing. I do believe that he's allowing people to do their job and allow them to make the ultimate decisions. I feel like hopefully David Tepper has learned, I'm not the smartest guy in the room when it comes to football, and I need to hire those minds and trust their decisions and just back those decisions. So hopefully we're going to be heading in the right direction here. So after hiring Dan Morgan and then Dave Canales, we were getting rid of some players. So the biggest one was Brian Burns. There's a lot of talk and a lot of people were upset with not just trading him, but what we got for him. So we got a second-round pick last year, and then we got a fifth-round pick coming up next year, but it was a swap. At the beginning of the 2023 season, I really wanted Brian Burns to be re-signed. I remember that first game, he had 1 or 2 sacks, he had a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. And I'm like, you got to sign this guy. He came out of this season hot, But I feel like once he knew those contract negotiations were going to be stalled, I feel like he kind of stepped back and he protected himself, which I understand. But looking back on it now, um, he signed with the Giants 5 year, $150 million contract. I believe it was like 87 something, $88 million guarantee, which he did okay with the Giants. But to me, that contract, he was asking for around what 30 million a year. He wasn't at that level yet. He's not at the TJ Watt, the Miles Garrett. Um, he's not at that level yet. This past season, he had 42 tackles, 8.5 sacks in 17 games. He was healthy, but he wasn't. He's not that guy. Can he be that guy? Maybe, but I feel like we made the correct decision. It just sucks ultimately because we could have got 2 first-round picks from the Rams several seasons ago when Scott Fitter was the GM. And whenever you pass that up, that gives a lot of ammunition and leverage to Brian Burns and his agent. So the handling of Brian Burns was very poor. And then another amazing player we lost. I feel like probably the best player we lost. No disrespect to Brian Burns, but Frankie Louvu. Guy had a amazing season with the Commanders. He was second team All Pro. He had 8 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, an interception, 54 tackles. As you guys remember, great run defender and pass rusher, and just had that keep pounding mantra. He was everything that you would want as a Panther, but he ultimately left. He ultimately left because several things. One, the biggest one that was out there was he wanted to play in a different scheme with Dan Quinn. And then the other one was ultimately people and the reports are saying that the Panthers came to the negotiating table late after there was a lot of momentum going to the Commander side. And if that's true, I'm not a fan of that. He's a amazing player. You got to resign him. That was something we missed for sure. The other players we missed, Dante Jackson. As you know, we traded Dante Jackson to the Steelers for Deontay Johnson. I feel like this was kind of a wash. Like Dante Jackson right now, a lot of Steeler fans hate him. Like the way he played is how he played here. He was really good run defender, but coverage, like his coverage defense was really low. It was like I want to say it's 46 PFF grade, but he had 5 interceptions, which ranked third in the league. But he gives up the big play. He bigs up, and he's getting a little. He's not old, but he's getting a little older where that speed isn't the same. Then we lost Von Bell. Not the biggest miss in the world. Jeremy Chin, he left as well. Again, a part of that, I'm not sure if that's Evero or Chin, but he is playing for the Commanders. Again, he is really physical, great run stopper. He was a liability in coverage, but he just ultimately really didn't seem that he was utilized really well. And then Bradley Bozeman, we lost. He played center for us. He was a good run blocker, but liability with pass blocker. We did improve with Cade Mays. Cade Mays, feel like was a better run blocker and pass blocking. So I feel like we upgraded with him. But these are the main players we lost. But I felt like this past free agency was one of the better ones we've had in a while. So Robert Hunt, this guy was worth every dime, in my opinion. Every dime. He missed one game, I believe it was the last game of the season. He only allowed 5 sacks, just a beast. As you all remember, the 2023 season was really bad at offensive line. So going into the season, Dan Morgan had to answer the question, is Bryce Young the quarterback of the future? We have to know that answer. In order, how are we going to move forward as an organization? Because based on 2023, the answer is no, but there's a lot of variables to that. Poor coaching, instability at coaching, poor offensive line play, poor receiving play. There was a lot of factors. And obviously, he was a rookie quarterback. So there's a lot of factors to that. So now Dan Morgan going into the season, once he's hired, is he has to be able to put Bryce Young in a position to succeed, and you had to start at the offensive line. The guard play, the up front was the worst I've seen in a long time. So you have Robert Hunt and you have Damian Lewis. So Robert Hunt that we got from the Miami Dolphins, Damian Lewis we got from the Seattle Seahawks. Damian Lewis was pretty solid for us as well. He only missed one game. I believe he ranked around 17th at his position, and he only allowed 6 sacks. So really good group up front. Um, that did allow Icky and Timo to play a little bit better as well. Timo's always been pretty stable for us, but Icky is slowly kind of like getting back to his rookie season. You know, he had a good rookie season and kind of fell off his sophomore season, but he's getting better, and I believe like he still has some room to improve at pass blocking. But this offensive line is looking great, and hopefully they still remain healthy going into the next season in 2025. So a couple other players we added. Deontay Johnson again. We talked about how we traded Dante Jackson for Deontay Johnson. Dan Morgan wanted to try, and Dave Canales wanted to try to give Bryce Young a number one. Deontay Johnson, I feel like can be a number one. He has the quick twitch. He has good feet, pretty quick, shifty, a good player. And we'll kind of get into him in a little bit later, but he was solid. You know, coming into the training camp, you hear a lot of good positive things with Deontay Johnson and Bryce Young. And then it seemed like things were going well. And then it kind of unraveled after, I want to say week 6, 7, 8, it just started getting bad. Yeah, because I believe he only played 7 games. He did have 30 receptions for 357 yards, contract year, and he pretty much showed any free agent out there what not to do. I mean, he cost him and his agent millions. All he had to do was stay in Carolina. If you didn't like being here, just bite the bullet for a year. You had another 10 games to go, another 10 weeks to go, and you would have got paid. You would have, and then going in that trajectory, you would have been close to 1,000 yards. You would have got paid. But he was impatient. Josie Jewell we got from the Denver Broncos. So we needed another linebacker coming into the season. Shaq Thompson, obviously, with his injuries. We needed another linebacker in free agency to provide some stability there. And obviously, he has ties to Evero. Josie Jewell did have some injuries this past season, but he did play 12 games, had 51 tackles, 3.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and 2 forced fumbles and an interception. And it seems like he did get better as the season went on. But again, there's a history of injuries. So he had that torn pec in Denver back in 2021, and he's had some nicks and injuries this past season, but he did start to improve as the season went on, and feel like he'll continue to improve, especially being in the system. But I still feel like we need to add to this group. Ashawn Robinson up front had 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He can definitely improve. To me, he's mid. He's okay, but I feel like we can improve in this room. Dane Jackson, he played 9 games. I remember he had a hamstring injury, 4 games out, and he contributed to some cornerback depth. But I felt like was going to be the starter, and then injuries just kind of took him out. And then other corners played well, including Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson, I feel comfortable with him, like definitely being CB2 depth. Being CB2, you know, I feel like he can improve to that. But I do feel like he gave us a lot of solid contributions. 68 tackles, 2 interceptions. He had 17 passes defended. He had a 68.1 coverage grade. And then also his passer rating that he allowed was 97.4. So he can definitely improve, and I still feel like we can improve in this position. But Mike Jackson was solid this season. I feel like he gave us some really good games. We got DJ Wanham. So at the beginning of the season, DJ Wanham was on the PUP list. He had a torn quad, had multiple surgeries, and seemed like he was improving. And then you had like the MRSA blood clots in the lungs, and so it took a while for him to get into the lineup. He played ultimately 8 games. It wasn't bad for us. When he got in there, he did give us some much needed pass rush that we were lacking, and we still lack. But he contributed okay. He had 4 sacks out of the 8 games and 18 tackles. So again, I still feel like we can add to the edge rushing room, but I just don't know if they're going to sign another guy or not, or if they're. I feel like they definitely have to address in the draft, but and we'll go into a little bit, but we definitely need to add to this group. Jordan Fuller, again, having ties with Ezra Evero, and it was safety out of the LA. And I felt okay at the beginning of the season going into, he seemed okay. Rams, my brother in law's a Rams fan and said that he was pretty solid for him, but he was, no disrespect, dude was trash, dude. he was he was trash. we This whole safety group is going to be overhauled. We Xavier Woods may come back, we may resign him, but overall, like this safety group was trash. David Moore, I feel like he was a solid wide receiver depth guy. He did have some crucial drops, but I feel like he did contribute pretty well. But still feel like we can add to this group here. So going into the draft, Dan Morgan's first draft here. So he drafts Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, and going in with Legette, for him, he's very physical. I believe his speed is underrated. Uh, Going into the season, a lot of reports are saying that he needs to work on his route tree. And I feel like this season, like his route tree was really good. Like he was getting his routes were great, but drops in crucial moments. There was at least that I remember. There's 2 games that he dropped. I know that one was a potential touchdown, but I want to say there was 2 games that he cost us from dropping a pass. So he better be on the judgment machine. He needs to uh, improve in his hand-eye coordination because he has the talent. He just needs to let's catch the ball first. Um, but with him though, going into the season, he had a foot injury in training camp, so he's got a lot of injuries like in different areas too. So you have the foot injury in training camp. He had the shoulder injury against the Bears in the early part of the season. He had a wrist injury that I guess has been bothering him since college, and that he aggravated in I believe, the second Saints game. Um, he had a hip groin injury against the Cowboys, and then he had a toe injury that was on the report. He didn't end up playing, but just a lot of different injuries. So hopefully he can stay healthy and improve, continue to improve. I still feel like we need to give him at least. I always believe in giving a player at least 2, but preferably 3 years to really judge is he a guy or not. And I feel like he can definitely be a guy, but you got to allow him to develop because, in my opinion, he's a second round talent drafted in the first round. We got him in pick 32. We were pick 33. We just moved up to get that 5th year option. He's a second round talent, but he has the tools to become a first round talent, to be a good wide receiver one, but it's going to take some developing. But I still feel like we need to go out and get a guy, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But we need to go out and get a guy this coming season. The second round pick, we picked Jonathan Brooks. So if you remember, this is the Brian Burns pick, but we traded back and traded with the Rams. We were at pick 39. We traded back for the Rams, and we traded back up to get Brooks. I was not a fan of this pick. Not because of Brooks. I think he's a great talent, but when you have one, it's running back. It's running back. You can get a good running back 4th, 5th round, but you get a running back in the second round, and he has a torn ACL, and he's not 100% ready right now because he tore his ACL back in November in 2023. So he wasn't going to be ready till at least mid-season, and he ended up coming back. I want to say it was like a game or 2 before the Eagles. I think he only played a couple games and he retore it. but retore his ACL against the Eagles, and he may not even play next season. He just had his ACL surgery, I believe, like a week ago. And so we definitely are gonna have to look into. I don't think we're looking free agency for a running back. Um, I think we're gonna draft a guy, but you had Chuba with the injury, and then you have Brooks with this. What looked like a really good solid group, which it is. Chuba's amazing. We're gonna get Chuba back, obviously, but Brooks, like I just was not a fan of this pick round two. I feel like we could have got another player. Again, I love his talent. I think he'll be a great talent. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. But and there are some running backs out there that have history of two ACL tears and that are still productive, but that's not a great start in your rookie season, and you've already had two ACL tears. So, wasn't a fan of this. Round three, Dan Morgan picks up Trevin Wallace, linebacker. Um, I wasn't too sure about this pick. I'm not a big film breakdown guy, except like the top, like maybe 25 or so, 30. But when it starts to get to the later rounds, maybe I will eventually, but I don't really get into the film. I'm not a big X's and O's guys, but I feel like I'm pretty good at judging talent, just like through the eye test. But I do trust with Dan Morgan being a linebacker before and then be scouting. I just trusted him. And so I look at the film. He seemed like a solid player. I feel like he was thrown in the fire this past season. He grew as the year went on. The run defense needs to improve. He was solid in coverage. He had 43 tackles and a sack, but he continued to develop and grow. Again, I still think we need to add to the linebacker group. I don't know if we re-sign Shaq Thompson or not this coming season, but we need to add to this group because two out of the three linebackers that we had this season were injured a decent amount. And I think Trevor Wallace might have been injured a game or two, but we need to add to this group. Linebacker, I feel like, is a very underrated need for us coming into the 2025 season. My favorite pick, the best value pick for sure, was JT Sanders, Jatavion Sanders out of Texas, the tight end. Um, he had 33 receptions this past season, 342 yards. Great great pass catching tight end, but really poor blocking, especially at the beginning of the year. Again, he's young; his body's still growing, but the blocking did develop as the year went on. But you definitely could see at the beginning of the season there were some really bad misses on the edge there in certain plays where he just totally missed a guy. So, but I feel like he did improve, but then he ended up having the injury that he was out for a while. But this guy, I feel like, this is what I like about the Dan Morgan right now. He's finding guys that are contributing, and we'll go down the list a little bit more here, but he's finding guys in later rounds that are contributing, right? This is what you want. You want your GM to find talent in the later rounds that are going to contribute. So that way now you can use that free agency money and get certain guys, right? Versus like trying to spread it as much as you can. If you're able to draft well, that sets you up well in free agency. The next pick in the fifth round, we got Shaw Smith Wade. So I feel like he did contribute later on in the season. He was transitioning, so Shaw Smith Wade was an outside corner, but then he went to nickel. I felt like he was solid for us. He did play a little bit of a corner for us, but I think he'd be good depth. I still like the adding to this group. I feel like that they will in the draft, but the good part about this past season is a lot of young players played, and that's going to add depth for us into next season. So this was a good pickup. Jaden Crumby, he was placed on IR from the start of the season due to an ankle sprain he sustained during the preseason, and then waived him. Michael Barrett, he was the one that we traded for Mike Jackson for to the Seahawks. The Seahawks eventually did waive him, but again, I like how Dan Morgan used some guy that wasn't going to be on our team, and by the beginning of the season, I got a solid depth piece in Mike Jackson. So I'm liking what I see with Dan Morgan so far. So let's talk about it. Bryce Young. So again, this is my first video. I'm gonna kind of give my opinions on a lot of this, like going back, so that way you kind of get an idea of like where I'm coming from. But Bryce Young, we all know it was a disaster 2023 season. There's again instability in staff and the staff with Frank Wright coaching, play making the play calling, Thomas Brown making the play calling, back to Frank Wright, the instability there, the poor offensive line play, the poor receiving play. It was a disaster. And I do believe there's too many voices in his ear. I really believe there's a lot of different people telling them different things. I don't feel like there's a structure with this coaching staff. It was just a lot of uh, great people that didn't have a vision, and that's what happened in 2023. So going into 2024, again, we got a solid offensive line. We got better receivers. But what happened in week one and week two is he did look worse. Whether you want to admit it or not, week one and week two, Bryce Young looked worse. He was worse. He honestly looked like he did not belong on a football field. That's how I felt. I did believe in his talent, still do, obviously, but he, I felt like I didn't think that I was surprised that Dave Canales benched him so early in the season, which obviously like it was the right decision. But just the way he was playing, we need to see what can the rest of the offense do. Is the offense look this bad with another quarterback? Like, is it this bad? What is the issue? And so when he pulled him after 2 games, he had a 59% completion percentage. He passed for just under 300 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 68. So he gets benched, and you have Andy Dalton that comes in and he starts for the Raiders. And when he's playing for the and whenever during that game, you saw like that whole offense looked totally different. Looked totally different. It and that made Bryce look really bad. A lot of the Panthers on Twitter, a lot of Panther fans, were like Bryce is gone. Where people are talking about trading him, you know. And I wasn't a fan of that. I felt like you gave up a lot to get this guy. Now that you benched him, let's have him earn his way back, especially if, going into the season, I felt, or like when Andy was playing, I felt that if Andy continued to play well like he did with the Raiders and then with the Bengals, and you're winning games, you can't put Bryce back in. But once we start losing games or we start to get out of contention, especially in the division, I believe that you're going to see him back. I just wasn't sure when we were going to see him back, but he was going to come back. But the Raiders and Bengals game, Andy Dalton looked solid. But after that, we looked like the same offense after that, the same. But then car crash happened with Andy Dalton, spraining the right thumb. A lot of people not sure how valid that is or not, but didn't play the next game. So the Broncos, Bryce Young came in and he did okay. I mean, he did throw 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 interceptions. He passed for like 224, but he looked like okay. He looked a lot better than he did week one and week two. I'll say that. But for the most part, after that, each week, except for the Cowboys, each week Bryce Young improved and got better and better and better. And so did the offense overall, and so did Dave Canales as a play caller. The corporate was how bad the defense was, but that never changed. But Bryce Young got better each week, and he ended up starting 10 total games. And so this is what you get with 10 total games: 60, almost 61 completion percentage, 2,400 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 88.2 passer rating. He is our franchise quarterback, hopefully, and I believe he will uh, continue to have that momentum as because we ended the season with a lot of momentum, and especially the offense. So hopefully he will continue to improve. But I still believe you need to give him and try to find him another guy. You need to add to that receiving room. I still feel like you definitely have to again get another running back for some depth, and wouldn't hurt to get a backup tackle. Maybe re-sign Brady Christensen. We'll kind of go over that in a little bit here as well. But maybe re-sign Brady Christensen to a team friendly deal so that, again, he's a swing guy. He plays a lot of different positions, but I feel like getting one or two pieces, like as far as depth in the offensive line, so that way when people are injured, we don't fall behind. Sabala, he had a good last game whenever we played the Falcons. Robert Hunt was out, and Sabala filled in. So I feel like we could add a little bit to and help Bryce Young, but we really got to focus on the defense. But I do want to go over and give some grades here. So grading the offense. So the offensive line, I gave an A. Robert Hunt, solid. Damian Lewis, solid. Icky overall was solid. Again, he's a lot better. He's a really, really good run blocker and decent pass blocking, but he's getting better. Moten, solid. Corbett, beginning of the season, he was solid. He seemed like he was doing okay, but then he had the torn bicep in the Bears game and he's out. I do not see us re-sign him though. Don't see it happen. 2 season injuries back to back. I just don't see you re-sign him. You have Brady Christensen. He did start in the weeks 6, 7, 8 when Corbett went down. He was okay, but we did sign. Whenever Corbett got hurt too, we did sign Cade Mays off the Giants practice squad for some center depth. But again, Cade Mays was solid, especially pass blocking. He did play in the Giants game, and he did well against Dexter Lawrence in the Giants game. I really think Cade Mays is like someone you have to re-sign. But I think he got the starting gig after the Chiefs game is when he started getting the starting gig. But I think you sign Cade Mays before you re-sign Brady Christensen. But I hope we can re-sign Brady Christensen too. But offensive line overall was really solid. Running back position, I gave a B plus. So obviously you have Chuba. He had just under 1,200 yards for the season. He had 11 touchdowns. He played 15 of the 17 games. Really solid. I think that's great. He just signed a 4-year, $33.2 million contract, and had a Pro Bowl season, in my opinion. He should have been in the Pro Bowl. But he went on the IR due to a calf and knee injury. The MRI did show a grade 2 calf strain, but he'll come back 100% coming into next season. Again, Brooks with the running backs, he played a couple games, but again, with the re-tear of the ACL on the right ACL, don't see him really playing any games in the 2025 season. We'll see. And then you have Miles Sanders. Trash, dude. He had a great final game. I'll give him that. But it's time to move on with him. I think you'll save some. You're going to save, I want to say it's around $5 million in cap savings with him. But I just think you just find someone in the draft to complement Chuba. I mean, Chuba is your main guy, right? But I don't see you bringing back Miles Sanders. I think it's time to move on from him. All right, wide receivers, I give a B. Adam Thielen, solid year. He had 615 yards. He had that hamstring injury with that amazing catch with the Raiders game, if you remember, in week 3 for that touchdown to be ahead, and injured his hamstring. And then he was out for several weeks, but had a solid season. Coker started playing a lot more when Thielen was down. So when Thielen got injured, you saw a lot more playing time with him. He obviously took advantage of this. He took advantage of the opportunities. I feel like he has the best hands on the team outside of Thielen, in my opinion. But Jalen he's moving up. He's going to be a solid 2. Who knows? He'll be a 1, but he's a solid 2. And again, credit to Dan Morgan. You found a guy, undrafted player. Steve Smith did say that coming into the 2024 NFL draft, that Coker had the best route tree out of every receiver. I feel like you have the best route tree of every receiver. You should get drafted, right? But Coker, love the kid. Seems humble, really nice kid. I'm glad he's on our team. Obviously, you have XL that we drafted this past season. Again, improving his route tree, very fast and physical, but he needs to learn to catch the ball a little bit more consistently. But I feel like hopefully he'll continue to grow coming into next season. The tight ends position, I gave a B. I was leaning towards B minus with this, but JT Sanders has such a great season. He had the most pass catching yards for a tight end in his rookie season. But again, his blocking needs to improve and has improved, but it needs to continue to improve and just adding weight to his body. Just building. He's young. Obviously, he was a rookie, second year coming up, and he will grow. He needs to be bigger, but he did improve with pass blocking. Tommy Trimble played. He played 12 games. He had 234 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Injuries were an issue with him. He had the hamstring in training camp. Week 5, he had a knee issue. He had a concussion in week 6 with the Bears game. Week 7, back injury after clearing the concussion protocol. And then week 9, he was listed as week 9 and 10. He was listed as questionable with the back, but he did play. And then he had a shoulder injury in the last game of the season. So I feel like Tommy Trimble, and there'll be another video out of kind of go over free agency coming up. But I feel like that he's someone I would like to see resign. And I do see Ian Thomas, no disrespect, but time to go. He needs to go. I don't want Ian Thomas should not be re-signed. It's just he's gone through a lot of different coaches, and it's time for him to go. He only played like 5 games. Out of the 5 games, he had 3 receptions for 7 yards. He was on IR at the end of the season. He was on IR with a calf injury before the season, but came back but re-injured the calf in the Giants game. I don't think we saw him after that. So I believe he went back to IR after that. So Ian Thomas got to go, but Tommy Trimble, hopefully re-sign him. Now going into the defense. Bro, this defense could not stop anything. They couldn't stop a cold, dude. The run was so bad. They could not stop the run. Like I think it was like 6 yards per carry was the average for the season. Like that's trash. Obviously, week 1, so unfortunate that Derek Brown went down with a meniscus injury, season-ending injury. I gave them a D here because again, like I feel like I don't even feel like they should get anything more than a D, but I'm trying to be nice. But you have Ashawn Robinson here. Jadeveon Clowney had 5.5 sacks. I just feel like with the defensive line, you need a really good, true nose tackle. We definitely need edge rushers, but nose tackle, I feel like Shy Tuttle isn't it. Got to get rid of Shy Tuttle. We need to get a guy. We need to get a guy because we need to add to that group to stop the run. We cannot stop the run. Linebackers, C minus. I feel like Shaq was doing solid until he got injured. But obviously another season with Shaq out, so having a season-ending injury. You had Josie Jewell that played not the best at the beginning of the season, but he got better again as the season went on. But he had his injuries as well. Trevin Wallace, he improved as the season went on. I feel like this group was okay, but we definitely need to add to it. But I gave them a C minus. Cornerbacks, obviously you have J.C. Horn that was solid the whole season. CB2, that was a revolving door. I think Mike Jackson was a good, solid contributor. Dane Jackson was okay, but I feel like we still need to add to. We need to add to the whole defense. I'll say we need to add to all these groups. We need help at every level of the defense. Safety, I gave a D. There is so much miscommunication this season with safety. There's so many busted coverages. But Xavier Woods, we'll see if we resign him. I feel like he's below mid, to be honest with you. He had a PFF grade of 57. He had 3 interceptions, which was 12th in the NFL, but he had 14 missed tackles. And I feel like just this whole defense as a whole had so many missed tackles this past season. So many. I just felt like I remember with the Falcons game, Bijan Robinson, like he's an okay guy, but you have like people that are, it's just he's like he was acting like he was Marshawn Lynch out there, dude. Like no one could bring him up, bring him down. It just felt like tackling was so bad. And then and the next video we'll talk about like Evero and all that, but the personnel does need to get better. Hopefully, and so does the scheme, but hopefully both of those improve going into 2025. But Jordan Fuller was the worst, dude. He's trash. Get him off the team. Win targeted this season, this dude allowed a perfect passer rating, worst in the league. 158.3 passer rating he allowed when targeted. Dude, I can do that. So he's got to go. Nick Scott below mid two. You got to improve this whole defense. It's bad. Special teams. So Panero actually was solid the first half of the season, but I know and I heard about injuries, but in my opinion, if you're injured and you're playing, I mean, even if you're injured, if you're playing, I can still critique you. He had an 84% field goal percentage, which ranked 24th in the league. He only had 50, or I only had two 50 plus field goal attempts and only made one of them. His PATs, he made 33 out of 35. But one thing that was concerning with me when I even kind of doing some research with this, the average field position was at the 29.1 yard line. That was ranked 37th in the NFL. Bro, there's only 32 teams. He ranks 37th in the NFL with field position. I get like special teams, like that's a group, but this guy's gone, by the way. You ain't re-signing this guy. This guy's trash. You're gonna have to find someone else. And again, there's other videos I'll kind of go over like what we can do, but you cannot re-sign this guy. Like the whole all Panther fans hate this dude. He couldn't make. Dave Canales he was going for it on like 4th and 2, 4th and 3 when they're on the 30 because he didn't trust this guy making like a 45 plus yard field goal, even a 40 plus yard field goal. So again, I'm not in the room. I don't know like what limitations he had, but when you're out there, you're allowed to be judged. If you couldn't do it, you got to let them know and then find someone else. But this definitely needs to get better for sure. But overall grade with the Panthers, I give it a C minus. We won 5 games. That's more than double than we won last season. We were 3rd in the NFC South. We did not get last place. The Saints did, and the Saints are in trouble. That cap situation is not good. I think they're like negative 50 something million in cap this coming season, and they're not good. So they better start drafting well. If they don't, they're going to be bad for a while, which I like. We were 23rd in the league in points scored, but we were obviously dead last in points allowed. We gave the NFL record for most points scored in a season. The season did start off poorly, but ended the season with a lot of momentum. The Falcons game was the best game I've seen all season, the best Bryce Young game I've seen all season, and the best coaching I've seen all season on the offensive side of the ball. We have to improve on the defensive side of the ball. Have to. We still can't neglect the offensive side of the ball, but I feel like 75%, a lot of free agency is going to be towards defense. We'll see if we get a big name wide receiver in free agency, but we have to add to this defense. Have to. But there's a lot of optimism going into the next season, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to shut it down for today. Thank you guys for watching. Again, this is my first video. I'm all about positive and negative constructive criticism. So if there's anything that you liked or that you didn't like that you feel like I need to improve upon, leave it in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you are so inclined, subscribe. I plan on trying to do 2 videos a week. I work 2 jobs and I have 3 kids, so I don't have a lot of time doing this, but I wanted to make it a hobby. Hopefully, it's something that, I can maybe grow into having, a community where we can talk about, the Panthers, NFL news, and just have good dialogue. So, with that said, thank you guys for watching. Have a good one. Keep pounding. Peace.